I'm going to give, well, it's been a few minutes. Hello, everybody. So, I don't like when misinformation is spread. I don't know which camera to look at. This is weird. I don't like when misinformation is spread, and I've already made that really clear when I've talked about vaccines and abortion. I don't like when misinformation is spread. I don't like when things are, like, opinions are one thing, but when you spread facts that are false, it really bugs me. So, we're going to talk about some facts today about being transgender and what that means and how the human brain works and how gender and sex works and all that jazz. Which, honestly, is actually kind of simple, at least to understand. The whole process that goes on in our body is really complex, but understanding it is actually pretty simple. So obviously you're formed how you're formed starts, at conception. That the moment you're conceived, you have either two X chromosomes or two Y chromosomes. You already have the basis for biological sex, right? But there is a gene called the SRY gene. And when you're an embryo and your body's starting to form and you've actually already got some of your parts, you have two little gonads, which will either become male or female, depending on what happens. But we all start with the same two little dealios. And then what happens is this SRY gene will, if you are male, you have this SRY, and it will then push the gonads to become testicles. And if that doesn't happen, then they will become ovaries. That's why you get different parts. They literally start from the exact same thing, and this one little gene tells it which way it's going to go. If that gene malfunctions in any way, then you could theoretically have X and Y chromosomes and then end up with ovaries. It's been known to happen, actually. And then if at any point in time you have a malfunction in the genes that help determine biological sex, you could as an adult have ovaries that then start to function as testicles. That's crazy, right? It seems absolutely ludicrous, and a lot of times when you talk to people about it, they don't believe you. But here's the thing. We've accepted... My kids are being loud. Hey, Aiden! You're being very loud. Thank you. We've accepted that many other different species of animals can switch their biological sex at any point in time. Has anybody seen Jurassic Park? I mean, it's literally in Hollywood movies because it's that widely known and accepted that there are some species of animal that can completely change their biological sex. You could have a group of females and one of them can switch over to male and impregnate all the females. It's been known to happen in other species, and for some reason it's really hard for people to wrap their brains around the fact that it actually does happen to some humans. It's not common. It's definitely not common. It's extremely rare, but it is totally possible. Then you have DMRTI and you have FOXL2, which are two genes that also help with that whole process. They are more active later in life, whereas the SRY is while you're an embryo. Those two are the ones that you need to function properly throughout your life to maintain your biological sex that you had at birth. And if they malfunction, then you have some odd things that can happen. And that's just the basis as an embryo, what your genes do and to determine your genitalia and all that. That's bare minimum biological sex right there, okay? That's not even talking about the things that go on in your brain that have to do with gender and such. That's just your body parts, okay? No matter how you feel or how you think, those are your body parts. Chromosomes, body parts, blah, okay? Then when we get into our brains. So first of all, there's no such thing as a male brain or a female brain. Did you know that? We thought there was a male brain and a female brain until as recently as the year 2000. Hey, Zachary. Zachary. Whisper, please. You should probably close the playroom door. That would probably help. Anywho, mom life. Hashtag mom life. I brain farted. Where was I at? Oh, so we've done so many different kind of studies and things and seen that like as early as 6 weeks old, female babies talk more than male babies. They coo and babble and stuff. And male babies tend to do more motor skill things earlier and do speech later, whereas female babies is the opposite. And males tend to be better at math and females tend to be better at language arts. And so we had this idea that there was a male brain and a female brain. And then as we became more advanced and could like do scans of the brain and actually look at the brain, we saw that we were right, that males have a different brain than females, that structurally they are different. However, recently we have found that at birth, they aren't. There is some little bit of genetics that goes into play, and our brains don't all look identical at birth because we're all individual and unique human beings. But generally speaking, there's no significant difference between a male newborn baby and a female newborn baby's brain. They're exactly the same. And what happens is as soon as 6 weeks after birth, we can see differences in the brains because of their experiences, because of the hormones that they have, because of the environment that they're raised in. You know, since females are expected to be more chatty, people talk to them more, so they become more chatty. Things like that. Our experiences shape our brain. We now know our brain has this remarkable plasticity and it is constantly growing and changing throughout our life. And it's pretty clear why Gen Z and millennials have more gender identity issues than previous generations, because our generations are more we're more aware of the fact that our parents, at least, were more aware of the fact that girls are treated differently than boys are. And so our generations were the first that it wasn't just girls are given dolls, boys are given Legos. I don't know. But now we've got girls are getting Legos and boys are getting dolls. And I look at some of the toys that I've got for my kids and they've all been pretty much the same. There's no been like real gendering of toys. And therefore, our brains are much less binary than previous generations because we are raised less binary than previous generations. Girls play sports now. Boys can do dance and art, and we've accepted the fact that, that's a thing. So now we find that these individuals, as they're growing older, more and more and more of them are identifying as non-binary because they don't really fit into the male brain or the female brain. Why? Because there is no such thing. There is no such thing. Every single human being on this planet is non-binary. Now, the difference between transgender and transsexual is that transgender is kind of the fluid moving through genders, whereas transsexual has actually had this sexual reassignment surgery. So knowing that information, basically every human being on this planet is transgender, because even if you are the girliest girly girl in the world, if you start playing more sports, do things more physical, start doing things that increase your spatial awareness, start doing more male activities, your brain is going to change to keep up with that. And you will slowly have a more and more masculine brain. It happens much slower in later adulthood than it does in the first 5 years of life. The first 5 years of life, our brain changes like at an alarming rate, but it will still change. The same with men. You can be this super masculine man and have the cliche male brain, and things like having children, childbearing changes the male brain significantly, actually. Having maybe not just childbearing, but maybe you lose your job and your wife goes to work to support the family and you stay home. That significantly makes your brain more female. Art, language, having more situations where you need to communicate, those all things make your brain more female. So we've seen that on brain scans. Like we've witnessed this. This isn't psychobabble. When I first started college, I was taught male brain, female brain, and that, that's what brain scans show, this, that, and the other. And slowly people started talking more and more about gender and not talking about the fact that we can actually look at these people's brains and see the differences and all that. So a lot of people think that that's just pop psychology garbage and there's no scientific basis for it and all that, but there's so much. There's no such thing as a male brain or a female brain. Every single one of us is non-binary. Every single one of us is gender fluid. You may identify more with male or with female because of the experiences that you've had and the ways that you've used your brain. You may feel binary, one or the other, but your brain has the potential to go with the complete opposite direction. Isn't that amazing that our brains just... This is why I study cognitive sciences, y'all. I'm fascinated by the human brain. Now that is your experiences in your environment. The last thing that affects your gender and your gender identity is your hormones. So we all, believe it or not, we all know of the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, right? Well, as children, those levels are pretty much the same across the board between males and females. They're pretty much the same. During puberty, we see a huge increase in estrogen in women and a huge increase in testosterone in men, or girls and boys, because they're not grown yet. And then, what are you doing?
Just trying to find a paper towel.
There aren't any paper towels.
Okay, screw it. I'll use some paper.
Anywho, after puberty, non-pregnant women and men have about the same levels across the board of estrogen and progesterone. We do see that typically males have higher levels of testosterone, but we've learned that only 56% of our testosterone has to do with our genetics and our chromosomal makeup. 56%. The other 44% is 100% your environment. Things like working out increases your testosterone. Things like having children and raising children lowers your testosterone. Your environment comes into play again there. So you can have a female. I actually have abnormally high levels of testosterone. It's part of my PCOS. The last time my husband and I both had blood work done for like a checkup, by the way, I had more testosterone than he did. Yeah. I also work out a lot more than he does. I also am studying things that are cliche, traditional male brain things. I'm studying medicine. I'm going to be a doctor. Yeah. I also, personality has an effect on it too. I typically have just a more aggressive go-getter personality, and he's more laid back. So, we've done brain scans on to further test this theory. We've done brain scans on homosexual males and then straight females, and found that there are certain parts of their brain that match up perfectly, that they have the exact same structure in their brain, and that we see in many ways some homosexual males have a female brain structure, and some homosexual females have a male brain structure, because your brain changes and it's plastic, and it just not plastic like actual plastic. Like, I hope you know what I mean. It's amazing. It's truly phenomenal. We've also done brain scans on trans individuals versus cis individuals, and those results are kind of inconclusive because many studies have contradicted each other, but it's, there's different variables that can affect the outcome. We've had studies where we've seen that transgender individuals have a brain similar in structure to the gender they identify with, rather than the sex they were assigned at birth. Then we've had studies that have shown that that they do have a brain structure more similar to the sex they were assigned at birth. So that one was kind of completely contradicted the other one. But there was a third one. So I'm inclined to go majority rules in this instance. There was a third one that showed that the brains of transgender individuals, those that identify as transgender, are completely different from the cisgender female or cisgender male brain. That there's like a third kind of brain. Isn't that crazy? That's amazing. Our brains are truly fascinating things. And to say, so for those of you that are anti-trans and are like, that's not really a thing, you can't just change your gender. Gender is a social construct. Gender is something that was made up by humans. Okay, like we decided gender roles and things, like we came up with that this is what female feels like, this is what male feels like. We came up with that. The only thing that we cannot change is our chromosomes. And nobody's claiming we can. Nobody's saying if you've got two X chromosomes, you can just exchange one of them for a Y and you can go from female to male just like that. Nobody is claiming that. Nobody at all. Nobody claims that that's possible. We all know that's not possible. Okay? We are saying that gender is a social construct and that it is a spectrum, and that we have the science to show that now. That we can see that it truly is. That your experiences, your hormones, the environment you grew up in, the things you enjoy doing, all have a huge impact on how your brain is formed, the structure of it, and the way you feel as a person, your personality. Like, whew, it's crazy. So, I hope this was informative. I would go more into detail, but I know the vast majority of people watching this are not neuroscientists or, anything of the sort, so I don't want to confuse the crap out of people. I tried to make that as simple as I possibly could while still doing the information justice. But, so, there you go. I'm going to end the YouTube stream now, and I will answer whatever questions are on the TikTok stream. So, I hope this was enlightening for some people.